Mover a pound to keep it. And I gave Mother a pound. I said I sold it for a pound.
Thank you.
Now it's
I didn't put it in because I wasn't sure how much, but I did open it for you.
I'd like 3 of these, actually.
You said a little.
Well, I've little room 3 of them.
No kidding.
What do you think you are?
I got a whole box of them, no
Smith gang?
problem.
2 more.
2 more? Whoa.
Joyce doesn't stay late.
Thank you.
You got
This is Mark's.
You got film in there?
I
Yeah,
can't find the microphone to ours.
my kids have been.
I have to look at the instructions to do this because I don't know how this works. Just sit down there, okay? Thank you. Thank you.
You having coffee?
No. Oh, stand by.
It's decaf. No, it's right here.
My friend is here.
Eh?
I want to do sitting next to me.
Have a sneeze to go with the coffee? Goes good with coffee.
I've got coffee.
I know, this kid gets
No, no, thank you.
For sure.
Was Sveinike med S was bästa som cancer.
You're right.
So the vote.
Would you want to give your father a little introduction?
I'll give an introduction.
Yes? Okay.
Sir.
The date is October the 23rd, 1998. My name is Louis Taub. My wife is Libby. We've come here to celebrate the wedding of my cousin Gordon's son, Nolan. My cousins have asked me to give them some details of our antecedents. I have no documentation at all, but all I have is what my mother has handed down to me, things which she received from her grandmother, and which I have no reason to believe are not true. Now, my great-grandfather's name was Moshe Strushik, and my great-grandmother's name was Yenta. Great-grandmother was born around 1800. She was taken by the French soldiers to cook for them during the Napoleonic Wars, 1812 to 1814. My great-grandfather Moshe was kidnapped when he was 12 years old and served in the Russian army for 25 years. In the course of his army service, he lost an eye. And as compensation, he was allowed to open a shenk, which was in effect premises on which alcohol was allowed to be drunk. This was a special concession, as no Jew was allowed to have such premises. On his release from the Russian army, he married our great-grandmother Yenta. They had 18 children, most of whom died in infancy. My grandfather, her son, had 2 older sisters who had married and moved away, and my mother never saw them. Our grandfather, who was named Aaron, being her youngest child, she gave birth to him when she was 50. He invited his mother to live with him and his wife and children, which she did, and lived well into her 90s. She died when my mother was 12 years old, and all the information I have is what she told my mother, who was the oldest child in the family and very close to her brother. Our grandfather Aaron, my mother always referred to him as Aaron Halevi, although my cousins don't have any recollection of being Levian. He married our grandmother, Gittel Primmert, around 1875. She had a number of miscarriages before my mother was born, around about 1880. They had 9 children, actually 10 children, one of whom died in infancy, Shana Golda. 9 survived. Their names in order of seniority were my mother Rachel, born 1880 or 1884, I don't know which. Her passport says 1880, but she says 1884. The next came Rochel, who was Zenek's mother, and then Hershleib, the father of Moshe, Isaac, and Shimshon. Then there was a brother Yaakov, we call him Yaakov. He came to England around 1913. He married But he died. We didn't see much of him after he married. Then came Bryna. She was known in Canada as Bella, the mother of Maurice and Harold. She was born around 1896. Then Abe, he came to London in 1914. I don't think he has any surviving children. He may have a son somewhere, but we don't know where he is. He was born around 1897. Then came a sister, whose name I cannot recall, but according to her name was Yenta. She and her husband and children perished in the Holocaust. Then came Jonas, who became Jack Strauss in Canada, the father of Harry, Gordon and Louis, my cousins. He was born around 1905. Is that right?
1901, I think. 1901.
No, not 1901.
Well, he was, when he died in 1959, he said to be 57, so that would make it 1902.
1902, probably 1902, because the last was Auntie Rivka. She was born in 1904. This I know for a fact because she was 16 weeks older than my oldest sister Jessie. And Jessie was born around September 1904. Auntie Rivka survived in the war in Russia. Came to America with her husband Gedalia and two sons, Michael and Simon, both deceased. My mother, Razel, lived to 89 and died in 1974. She had married my father, Benjamin Taub, in 1902. My father had served 4 years in the Russian army and was discharged in 1900. They opened a grocery store in Zorobid, which was my father's hometown. Some years ago I met a man who told me he came from Zorobid and said this town was the main horse dealing town in the area, and the Russians used to come there to buy horses for the army. It's possible that my grandfather was a horse dealer, but I have no knowledge of this, since my father died in 1919, 2 weeks before my 4th birthday, and my mother lost contact with his family. But that's all I've written. Now, any questions?
What was the ancestral home of the Struzek?
They lived in a small town or village called Shrensk, which was in Shepsa Powiat. Shep spelled S-I-E-R-P-C. Sheps. That was the district. And the nearest large town was Mława. It's spelled M-L-A-V-A. The L in Polish is pronounced like a W. That was the nearest town. Now, our grandfather, was a tenant farmer. He had this shank, which was a shop where he sold provisions, like the village store. And at the back of the store, there was a large room where the local people used to have their dances and their weddings, etc. They were the only Jewish family in the village with 300 non-Jews, 300 non-Jewish families. Besides which, he, as a tenant farmer, had to pay rent to the local Poritz squire, which he did in goods in kind, fruit, vegetables, milk, eggs, cheese, butter, whatever was produced on the farm. He had to pay some of it to the Poritz as rent. And also he had fishing rights on the Weissel. The Weissel, I think, was the Vistula. He had fishing rights in an area, and he used to catch fish. And my mother told me that Mondays and Thursdays he used to go to Mława to sell his produce.
Was Mława always under Polish rule?
Poland had been divided many, many times. The southern part of Poland was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The northern part came under the Russian Empire. And where they lived was not far from the Prussian border, the East Prussian border. Now in 1904, my mother was pregnant with my oldest sister, Jessie. And the Russian Tsar decided to declare war on the Japanese emperor. My father had no complaints about the Japanese emperor. Rather, he had complaints about the Russian Tsar, having stolen 4 years of his life. And he just stepped over the Russian border into Germany and went to Hamburg, where he had either relations or friends. The Russian Tsar and the German Kaiser were first cousins. They were both descendants of Queen Victoria. And the Tsar tried to get the Kaiser to repatriate all Russians of military age. Now, the Kaiser wasn't so well disposed towards the Tsar, so instead of repatriating all Russians of military age, he said all Russians of military age must get out of Germany. So my father went to England, where he stayed with my mother's aunts and her husband, and they lived there in the East End of London. And my mother came with my sister Jessie, who was 4 months old. My mother was 20. My sister Jessie was 4 months. And my mother arrived at Taub Bridge with all the petgewand and all the utensils and everything that she could manage to carry. And they set up home in one room on the 4th floor, where every drop of clean water had to be brought up from the yard, and every drop of dirty water had to be taken down to the yard. And that's how they lived for a little while. My sister Ray was born in 1906. And by then my father had progressed a little. He became a tailor. What he was before the war, I do not know. But in the Russian army, a Jewish soldier was either a boot repairer, a tailor, or a cook. And my father was a tailor. And he set up tailoring. My mother helped him. And he was getting on very well. And then my brother Sam was born in 1907. And then came children. Bessie was born 1909, Harry was born 1911. I was born 1915, so I said to my mother once, what happened in 1913? So I got a smack round the face.
You said your father went from Hamburg to England.
Yes.
Early in 1900.
1904.
And what relatives are you referring to that he stayed with in England? When did they arrive there?
Our grandmother, Gittel Primmett, had a sister living in the East End of London with her husband, David Greenberg. And my father went to stay with them. And he shared a bed with their son, Avram Leib. Did you ever meet Avram Leib? He lived in New York.
No.
He was a teacher of Yiddish. And we met him.
What was his last name?
Greenberg?
It was Greenberg as well.
And he married a lady named Angie, who was a buyer at Bergdorf Goodman's, a very nice lady. And she was a sister to Louis Rabinovitz, head of the Jewish Theological College, Jewish Theological Seminary. And she tried to persuade my son Bernard to meet Louis Rabinovitz and to take him into the theological seminary. But Bernard didn't want to. Well, it was conservative and he didn't want to.
Just getting back to that earlier question, you said that it was Gittel Primmett's sister?
Gittel Primmett's sister lived in London.
But how did she happen to be in London?
Well, they emigrated from Poland.
They emigrated from Poland?
Yes, in the probably around about 1890, because
for some good reason?
All her children were born in England.
For some good reason they emigrated?
I don't know.
Don't know.
And she had one daughter who was a court dressmaker.
Did the family consider themselves Polish? or Russian?
My mother said she was Polish. My mother could speak Polish, but she couldn't speak Russian.
Yes.
So although it was part of the Russian Empire, they were Poles. They considered themselves as Polish.
Well, many of Jews in that era were in the small communities. I don't think a lot of them could speak Polish. They spoke Yiddish.
No, my mother learned to speak Polish because she was friendly as a girl with the squire's daughter. And she picked up Polish from there. And they lived in a village where there were 300 non-Jews who only spoke Polish. So my mother spoke Polish.
This community, you mentioned the larger community was Walava.
Yeah.
But approximately where would that be? Does that still exist? Or?
It wasn't far from where they lived because my grandfather used to go in there twice a week with his produce.
What current border would that be close to?
Near the Prussian border, near the North German border.
Quite away from
What is now
Warsaw.
Poland?
It's now Poland, yes, of course.
Is it a long way from Warsaw or close to?
Oh yes, no, it's west of Warsaw, way west of Warsaw.
We always found that Dad could actually speak a little better Russian than he could Polish. Remember when the Russian hockey team was in the kitchen the first time? We could communicate with the hockey players.
Yeah, but he used Polish to do it, and he also spoke very good German because he was in Germany for quite a while.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recall hearing about that from your mom.
When my mother left Poland, your father was still in baby clothes. She told me that.
Well, if she left in 1904 and Dad was born in 1902,
Yes.
Dad must
He was
have
like
been
2 years old,
less than
that's
2
right.
years old.
And they were not reunited until
1957.
1957, like over 50 years later.
Bella came to London en route to Canada in 1923. Morris was then about 3 years old. She was coming to Canada and the ship had some engine trouble and pulled into Southampton. And we received a telegram from her that her sister is in Southampton and she would love to see her, etc. So it was May the 24th, 1923. How do I remember? May the 24th was Empire Day. And we used to get a half-day holiday from school. I came home from school lunchtime, my mother said, "Wash your face, we're going to Southampton." My mother had no idea where Southampton was. But anyway, we went to Waterloo Station and booked a return ticket to Southampton. We got there late afternoon and the two sisters fell on each other. And I think Uncle Abe came with. And by the time they got together and had exchanged their kisses, etc., etc., we'd missed the last train back to London. So we had to sleep over there in a dormitory. I slept in the ladies' dormitory. And I was only about 7 at the time. So. And then the purser came in, or the Jewish, there was a Jewish agent. He came in and said that the ship had more trouble than was at first anticipated, and the ship would have to be in dock for a week. So my mother said to him, "Can I take my sister back to London with me?" So he said yes. So she brought Auntie Bella and Morris back to London. And
She was with her husband at the time.
no, her husband was here in Canada.
Well, Izzy came
Because he
before
came with
Bella
Benny.
did.
He
Yes.
came with Benny earlier.
He was here, and she was coming to her husband. And whilst she was in London, Izzy had an uncle in London, Chileib his name was, I remember Chileib, little name. And we took her to see Chileib, and he gave her a present or something.
What was his last name?
Midgate.
It was the Midgate as
Yeah,
well.
it was a Midgate. And at the end of 7 days, my mother took her back to Southampton. And Morris was a little boy with a bald head, nearly. All his head been shaved, and could only speak Yiddish, with a deep Polish accent. The Zeta geht in Dorfje mit größer Hinschke. That's how he spoke. And that was that.
Do you know what happened with Aaron and Dieter Frummett, when they died and how they died?
We received photographs from them when they were 60, and they were quite well. He had a black beard and she had a nice schedel.
What year would that be?
1920, something like
I think we had Dad had a copy of that photograph too. The two of them together. Just
Yes,
this
yes.
portion out.
And then we got one when they were 80, but they were old people.
Well, they were, I think I remember a picture when they had white hair, and I thought
Yeah.
maybe they were not that old at the
They
time.
were old people then.
No, but the picture originally that I remember seeing in the house on Right Up Street was they still had black hair. He had a little black hat. He was wearing a black cap. And
Yeah.
she was wearing a black shade.
He was wearing a black hat with a peak.
That's right. That's right.
And was there no communication just because of the lack of communication at the
No,
time?
I used to write to them in Yiddish, and I think it was the Auntie Rivka or one of the daughters used to reply, and I wrote to them just before war broke out, and I got a reply. And that was that.
That would be in 1930,
39.
and that they were still alive at that time?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Aaron and Dieter Frummett?
They were still alive.
They were already in their
They
80
were
years
old.
old.
They were old people then.
So your expectation is that they would have died from natural causes? Or
Probably died of natural causes. I don't think they would have gone to a camp. I don't think so. Because they were old people.
And who was living, still living in Poland at the time? Which of the siblings?
When Yenta was living there, Rivka was living there. No, Herschleib was living there. I have a photograph of Herschleib taken with 3 children before Zenik was born, because Herschleib and those 3 children perished. Herschleib and his wife and those 3 children perished. Zenik told me.
How is it that Zenik has the same last name as you?
Is it? My father was Benjamin Taub, Benjamin Taub. He married my mother, Raisin Strushik.
Right.
His brother, Jonas, was so attracted to the family that he married my mother's sister, Rochel. So it was 2 brothers, married 2 sisters.
He married your mother's sister.
He
Rose?
married my mother's sister, Rochel.
Ruckel.
Rachel.
Ruckel, yeah. So then there was 2 brothers married 2 sisters on that side, and
Right.
2 brothers married 2 sisters on the
On the
Midgang.
Midgang side as well. There was, you call him Izzy, I knew him as Anshel.
Anshel.
And Gedalia. Izzy married Bella, Rainer, and Gedalia married Rivka. 2 brothers married 2 sisters again.
But he was still living in Poland.
Yes, yes. We received a photograph from Rivka and Gedalia when they were engaged. And she was a beautiful girl.
But your father's brother, who married Ruckel, was still living in Poland at the time.
Yes, yes.
So they never emigrated to England?
No.
Never had that opportunity?
No, I don't know. See, my father
Their parents
died in
were-
1919, and my mother lost all contact with his people, with his family, and we never heard from them again.
But Ruckel was her sister,
Rochel was her
and
sister.
there was no communication between them?
Mother couldn't write. I used to write for her.
And there were really no other ways of communicating with Poland?
My mother used to send money to her parents periodically, and conditions in Poland were then very, very poor, because if you sent them a few dollars in your money, it could last them a month. Conditions were very, very poor. Mother used to go, there was a foreign exchange shop where they used to charge a small commission, and they used to send money off for you to Poland. Mother used to go there periodically and send money to her parents. That was the only communication. And then we used to get a postcard, thanking her for the money, please send more.
So Ruchel was Zenik's mother,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But Herschleib, why did he
Herschleib was-
change his name to? What? Herschleib.
Herschleib was,
Why did he change his name to? Herschleib?
Herschleib was, Herschleib was
Shimon and
Yakubovich. Why did it?
Herr Slave
The
had
name of Strushik was not a Jewish name,
no, it's Polish name.
Polish name. And when Hitler came in, all Jews had to have Jewish names. So they took the name Yakubovich. Shimshon told me that. They took the name Yakubovich.
Now, they're the only one of the family who took that name?
Herr Slave.
Was he the only?
Well, he was the only one left there.
Only one left.
Yeah. Of course, Jacob and Abe came to England,
Rochel was still, oh, Rochel had named Taub, that's right.
and Jonas came here.
Our father came to America in about 19...
1919, 1920, something like
I thought it was before that.
I don't think so. I
No.
don't think so.
I thought it was more like
that. I think it was
1916 or
after- I think it
17.
was after
After
the
the
war.
war.
It was after the war.
Yeah.
After the war.
Wasn't there any communication with his sister, your mother, during those years, those intervening
No,
years?
no. The only communication we had was with Auntie Bella.
Ah,
And it took a long time, and then we received a letter from Auntie Bella in 1940.
40. And your last communication was 1922 when
Something like
you
that,
saw her.
but no
was
communication.
Morris already in London in 40, or did he come there later, during the war? Bella's son, Morris. It's meant the war years in
We
London.
received a letter from Auntie Bella saying that her son had joined the Canadian Army and they'd sent him overseas. And she thinks he might be sent to England. And she'd given him, she had our telephone number. So there must have been some communication. I think my sister Jessie used to communicate with her. And I got a phone call. We used to work Sunday morning. Got a phone call Sunday morning. Morris here. Where are you? He said, Tottenham Court Road. So I said, get me the taxi and come down. The address. Came in, soldier, Highland Light Infantry. And we took him home, we took him out, we took him to the Piccadilly Hotel for tea dance. He'd never seen anything like it in the kitchen. And he had to go back to barracks, and he used to come home. He used to come to us for every leave. Every leave he had, he came to us. And he used to bring home boys from Kitchener. I told you, he brought home Laurie Reader, and Sol Reader, and he brought home
Rosemont?
Kirschenbaum he brought home. There were several others I remember.
There was Sam Rosemont that was in the army as well.
There were several others who used to bring them home when he had leave. And his mother used to send us parcels. Food was not plentiful, but we had enough to live on. But she used to send us chocolates. You couldn't see a chocolate during the war. You couldn't see a chocolate. And she used to send us fruit wrapped in cellophane wrappers. It was very nice of her, very nice indeed. In fact, she wrote that if the family wanted to send the children to Canada, she would be very pleased to have them. But nobody would part up with the children.
It was a scary time for you. You weren't sure
yeah.
whether the Germans were going to
Oh,
attack
yeah.
in
Oh, yeah.
1942.
We didn't know whether it was safer to be in England or to send them to Canada.
Yeah.
Are there other Struziks that you're aware of?
No. No.
But Aaron must have had other family members, your grandparent, grandfather.
No, he was the youngest of the family. There were two, as I said, there were two older sisters who had married and moved away. And my mother never met them. So he was the Ben Yochid. He was the only
Survivor.
He had no brothers at all.
No brothers at all.
And you're not aware of anybody with that name?
No. Well, I don't think they would retain the name Strushik.
He hadn't had any brothers.
Abe changed his name to...
He changed his name. He became
Shaw.
from Avram Zeinbull Strushik. He became Alfred Shaw.
And he took that name when he arrived in England?
No. He was still Strushik, but when he opened a business, he thought it would be better to have a more compatible name.
Anglo name.
Yeah, so we call him Alfred Shaw. In his early years, he was very unsuccessful. Well, he didn't live very happily at all. He left his wife many times and went back. But
He was a butcher, yes?
He was a butcher. And but in middle life, there was a gentleman named Mr. Goschalk who had a grocer's shop in Hackney. And there was a butcher shop next door. And the butcher, I don't know whether he died or what, but the butcher there was no boss in the butcher shop. And in those days, meat was rationed. You had to go to the butcher with whom you were rationed to get your ration of meat. Sometimes it was a little more, most times it was a little less. And Mr. Goschalk was asked by the Custer's Commission to take over this shop because he was a very devout and honest Jew. I knew him well. And he wasn't a butcher. So he took in Uncle Abe to manage the butcher shop, which he did very efficiently. And Auntie Fanny used to help him in the butcher shop. And I suppose they saved up sufficient money for Uncle Abe to start on his own. And he took a lease of a shop in Wembley, Preston Road, Wembley, I remember, and he fitted it out beautifully. Tiled floors, tiled walls, beautiful. And he did very well there because Wembley was a very flourishing Jewish district. And he did very well. But unfortunately he got ill, he had cancer and died.
What year did he die? Because I was there in '59 and we visited Abe. And then I went back in '63 and we visited him. He still had the same butcher shop. Remember, so he must have died at about 65, was it?
Not long after. Not long after.
And Fanny died just not too long after that, I don't think.
No, Fanny lived on for a few years, but
His daughter died.
his daughter, that's right, Josie, she died.
Josie died.
They were a very unhappy family, very unhappy. Fanny had sisters who were real.
Tough cookies.
And Josie
No.
never got married.
Josie did get
She
married.
did get, well, that's right, she did. I met her on,
And she
that's
had,
right.
unfortunately, she had a boy who was backward.
Retarded.
Retarded.
I remember that.
And I know we went up to Shiva one night, and the son was neglected, was ostracized by Fanny's family. I don't know why. There might have been something in it. I really don't know why. And they sat on one side of the fireplace, and he sat on the other side. And the next night he didn't come. And we went up there, and there was nobody to say Kaddish. So they asked me if I would say Kaddish. I asked my mother, and mother said, go ahead. So I say Kaddish for him. But we invited the son and his wife to our house. They came once, but they weren't too friendly. They're a very unhappy family, very unhappy. And once Uncle Abe died, there was no contact.
There was 3 members of the Strusick family in London. There was Abe, your late
Jacob.
mother Rose, and Jacob.
Yeah.
And what was Jacob doing?
Jacob was a baker. He married a woman named Becky. Whatever he saw in her, I do not know, but he married her.
What name did he keep?
He was
Strusky. Who was the Strusky? Was it Strusky?
Strusky, they called themselves Strusky.
Yeah, so that was the Strusky. Remember the woman had a Strusky name.
They called themselves Strusky. And my mother remarried. It was the worst thing she ever did. She married in 1923, I think it was. And it didn't work out. See, my mother had a grocer's shop. And the man she married was 25 years older than her. My mother was 38, he was 63. He was a master tailor, a good tailor, and ready to retire. And my mother was a young woman.
And what was his last name? What was his last name?
Moskovsky. Moskovsky. And my mother became Mrs. Moskovsky. And he didn't get on with my brothers and sisters. I was little, 6 at the time. But Jessie and Ray and Sam were grown up. And they didn't get on at all well. And he retired from work. We had a large room on top of the house and shop. I went from the front to the back, and it was ideal for a workshop for a master tailor. And he worked there for a couple of weeks, and then he retired. And he lived on my mother's shop. And there were continual arguments between him and the children. And he tried to persuade my mother to write over the shop on his name. My mother knew that if she did that, the children would be out. So she refused. So he impregnated her in 1924 and issued an ultimatum. If you don't sign the shop over to me, I'm going to leave you. So my brother said, go. And he went. And David was born on May the 23rd, 1925. It was a week before Shavuos, because the bris was on Shavuos. And he didn't come to the bris. And we brought up David as a brother. He didn't know that he was from a different father. And until somebody spilled the beans and told him that he wasn't our brother, he was from a different father. And I think from that day on he changed. And but I can assure you that we treated him as a brother. In fact, the older children bought him toys which I never saw. He had a little pedal car and a motor, but it all was nothing. And we still kept him as a brother. And when he left school, found him a job in the fur trade, and he worked in the fur trade. And he lived with us all the time. And when we moved, he had his own bedroom, and he was paid normal wages. We didn't say, board and lodging or anything like that. We paid him his full wages. Whether he gave mother anything or not, I do not know. If he did, mother saved it up for him, because mother wasn't short of money. Not while she lived with me, mother wasn't short of money. And he got married from our house. And Lily and I took interference. And he married a very nice girl from a nice family. Very generous father-in-law. Set him up in business. Bought him a business. Ladies' underwear and blouses and things. Very nice. And a couple of years later, when the freehold came up for sale, I bought the freehold for him, very advantageously. But he wasn't a businessman. And I think he was losing money. Anyhow, he moved out of the shop and let the shop at a very good rental. But he wasn't a very good man to his wife. I remember her coming to us once. She came in a taxi crying. And I got hold of him and I read the riot act to him. Whether it improved after that, I don't know. But one day we were there, I think, and he tried to make mischief between the family. And we just walked out, Lily and I. We walked out. and we had no further contact with him. I haven't spoken to him for over 20 years. In fact, he has two sons, and one of his sons lives in a district not very far from us, and his children went to we have a school in the Shubin, and Kerem school. The children went to Kerem school, and they had parents Shavas there, and he came, one of the sons came, I think it was Alan, and he came over to me and he wanted to be friendly with me. This Alan, we used to work on Sundays, and I used to come home for lunch. And Alan was always there. Shirley, his mother, brought him. And he used to sit on my knee, and I had one spoonful and one spoonful for Alan. That's how we were.
What name did they keep the name Taub?
No. When David before David went in the army, Moskovsky didn't fancy, so he changed his name to Taub. So I didn't object. Well, you want to call yourself Taub? Okay, all right. So he became David Taub. But and the children are also Taub.
Till today. Till today.
Yes, yeah. And one of them appealed to our rabbi if he could make shalom between us. I said, it's gone too far. It's gone too far. Let it be as it is.
When did this happen? Because in '63, yes, you were still on
Yes,
terms of
it
because
happened
he was
around
at the
about
house.
19. My brother died in 1975, and he came to sit Shiva in Brian's house. But soon after that, it became unworkable. And that was that. I can assure you, no brother did more for a brother than I did for him. He had a needle to me. His father-in-law wanted to invest money in our business and make David a partner. And when Sam heard of it, wouldn't hear of it. And David left us. Thank you. And joined the mail order firm, and we sold them stuff, and the firm collapsed, and we lost money with them. And he was out of work, and he wanted to come back into the fur trade. And Mother said to me, take him back. I said, oh, no, I don't mind. I need to take him back. I had 100 workers, all right, so I've got another worker. So he could take his place amongst the other fur cutters. But when Sam heard of it, Sam wouldn't hear of it. Sam and Sam's wife and David could never get on. And he insulted her and called her names, and Sam wouldn't hear of it. But the funny part about it was that he thought I was the bad one, and I wouldn't take him back. I said, I don't mind if he comes back. But Sam wouldn't have him back, but Sam was a good one, and I was a bad one. Forget it.
Good cop, bad cop. Can I just take you back a little bit to where our father and any communication there was with your mother or
No, the only
English family?
communication we had was when your father was en route to America, the ship stopped at Liverpool, and we got a telegram to say that he was in Liverpool.
You know what ship it was?
No.
Okay.
I think it was around about 1920, something like that. But my mother was in no position to go to, just to fly off to Liverpool. That was that.
Well,
And we
he
didn't-
didn't spend that long there anyway. He didn't stay
No,
there.
the ship was only overnight. They only stopped there to reprovision or whatever, and it was away next day.
But do you recall any discussions during that period when, from 1920 to 1940, between your mother and within the family as to what's happening with the family in America or in Canada?
There was a communication between my sister Jessie and Auntie Bella. They kept in touch. I kept in touch with the grandparents in Poland. But that was all.
Everyone was busy surviving.
So
I
you're
know
saying-
that Auntie Rivka said that before they left their home, she made a hole in the ground and put the jewellery in there and covered the hole up. And when they went back after the war, they couldn't find the house. It's been destroyed. They couldn't even find where they'd lived.
That was the family home where she was born,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
and that no longer exists?
No, the whole area was wiped out.
Frank itself was completely obliterated, doesn't exist today.
No.
So then, you're saying my father came to Canada at about the age of 18 years old. So he came in 1920 or 21, he was born in 1902. You're surmising
Yes,
he
he
came
was
at
young,
18 or
young.
19 years old.
I think I gave you a photograph of him.
You gave me a photograph, I think he was in his 20s at that time. I have it at home. That's the one that I referred to last night where my grandchildren think it's Uncle Lowell. Because he resembles Lowell a lot. Or Lowell resembles him a lot, at least.
No, I think that was his passport photograph.
Is that right?
Yes.
So he was only about 19 or 20 then?
I think that was his passport photograph.
That's interesting. So he spent, I guess he must have spent about 7 or 8 years in the United States before he came
Well,
to Canada.
yes, he was in Buffalo,
In Philadelphia originally, I think.
Philadelphia or Buffalo, before he came to Canada.
I think he was in Philadelphia with Izzy and Minnie for a while, and then he came to Buffalo. But I do believe that Max Siegel actually brought him over, right?
Yes, my mother had a cousin, Max Siegel.
Oh, Max was your mother's cousin?
He was yes, he was my mother's generation. I think his mother, Max Siegel's mother, and our grandmother were either sisters or cousins. That was the family connection. And Max Siegel brought him over. Yeah,
Brought him over to Canada, to the United
the
States?
United
or
States.
brought him
And
to
I think
Philadelphia?
he was also influential in bringing Rivka and Gedalia to the United States.
Where did he live?
He
In
lived in
Buffalo.
Buffalo.
He was in the hat business.
He may have helped
He
that out.
helped, he helped, I know that it was.
Couldn't bring him into Canada because they had some type of communist
Communist
background.
yeah, because they were from a communist country, they wouldn't get him into Canada.
Well, we tried to get them into England, but the reply we got from the Foreign Office was there was no scheme for allowing complete families into England. If there were one surviving person of a family, they would allow that person in, but not complete families. And that was that.
Yeah, I think it was Max that was certainly assisted.
I think Max
My
was influential.
father and Uncle Izzy bringing him over, I recall that, because they had to get him into the United States. But it was funny why they went to New York rather than Buffalo.
Max was in Buffalo.
Yeah, Max was, but when Gedalia came, they came to New York rather than to Buffalo.
And ask Gedalia when we see him.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Do you recall communications after the war? That,
From Europe? Not at all.
no, between Canada, our father, and
Oh,
your
yes.
mother, that
Oh,
gave
yes.
rise to your mother's visit
Oh, yes.
in '57?
Yes. Oh, yes, they kept on regular correspondence.
Auntie Bella
Yeah.
and Jessie, yeah?
Yes.
Set it
Dr.
up.
Bell and Jessie, they kept on regular correspondence.
Because your mother was, how old was your mom when she came?
He came in '57, so my mother was either 73 or 77.
No, we have the picture from in the newspaper that was
Yes,
the white-haired
British
lady.
woman meets brother and sister.
Reunited
After so many years.
with
yes.
Bella and my dad.
I still have the paper, the Kitchener record.
Yeah.
But that visit took some 12 years after the war to
That
happen.
was 1957. Sam and Annie celebrated their silver wedding, and as a special treat, they came to Canada and took mother and brought mother with them. And then we came in 1959,
Right.
and we brought mother with again. And you came to England.
And I came to England, when you went back, I was in England, and I stayed with Sam and Annie, I remember at the house, on Bancroft?
Bancroft Avenue,
Bancroft,
yeah.
You have a chronology, Lou, that Stephen has prepared, family chronology. Have you touched on the people who are set out?
Well, actually, I've gone before this. You see, Stephen starts with Moshe Kowalsman and Esther Leah. That was my mother's maternal
I see.
parents.
And we
My
only
mother's
addressed
maternal grandparents.
The grandparents.
I've gone to my mother's paternal
Yes.
grandparents, which is before that. This Moshe Kowalsman and Esther Leah, they lived to over 100. They died in the flu epidemic in 1919. Flu epidemic in Europe swept right across Europe and killed millions of people.
Where did they live?
They lived in Poland. I think they must have lived in the same area.
So Gittel Freeman was a Kowalsman.
Gittel Frimet was a Kowalsman, yes.
And do you know any further back on the Kowalsman side? Any more of the history?
Well, my mother had an uncle. Gittel Frimet had a sister who lived in England and a brother, Jack, who came to England around about 1900. Because my mother remembers him as a little girl. He used to ride on horseback and take her on horseback with him. And he came to England around about 1900. And I think I told you that his name was Kowalsman, and when foreigners had to register, they asked him, how do you spell Kowalsman? So he couldn't spell it. And they said to his brother-in-law, what's your name? He said, Greenberg. He said, Greenberg, all right for you? Greenberg. Now, Greenberg, Uncle Jack, he was a tall English colonel figure with a white moustache. And when he walked, he thought he was a typical English colonel. Rugged complexion, handsome man, big man. And he married a girl named Martel Viner. My mother called her Auntie Martel. And her brothers, there were three brothers, there was Emil, Adolf, and Jules, I think. They were cutlers.
Cutler?
Cutlers. They used to buy cutlery, cheap cutlery, and sell it. Cutlers. They were what they used to call the RO, run-outs. And the year that Mother came to England, they were in Southampton where they used to get all the ships that came in, they used to sell cutlery to the sailors. And then they moved to Sheffield, and they had a partner, Cohen, an Austrian, and they started manufacturing cutlery.
Sheffield was the right place.
Yeah, that was the... yeah. And when the war broke out, Cohen was an Austrian and was interned. And
In England?
In England,
Oh,
yeah.
really?
He was interned in England. He was an Austrian. We were fighting against the Germans, the Austrians. He was interned as an enemy alien. And the Viner brothers took over the business. And when Cohen, I think, died during internment or around about that time, and they became the master cutlers of England. Viners of Sheffield. You've heard of Viners of Sheffield, world famous cutlery. They were Viners. It was my mother and Uncle Jack married Martin.
So were there other Kowalsman children? Did Jack have children?
Jack had children.
I guess they would have been Greenberg children.
Yes, Jack had. He had a number of sons. One of them, Johnny, I remember. Yes, Johnny married the daughter of a friend of ours. there were another two. I can't remember their names. I never met them, you see. They're all a generation older than I. And they lived in Sheffield. I didn't go to Sheffield, they didn't come to
I
London.
see. But as far as you know, they stayed in England.
Yes, as far as I know. They might have emigrated, I don't know. I really don't know.
And you said...
I think they cut off the berg. They cut the berg off the Greenberg. And they remain green.
Green.
Yeah.
And you said that there was a sister. Did the sister have any
Sister.
children?
The sister, my mother's aunt, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, she had children. She had a number of children.
What was the family name?
Greenberg.
Oh, she was also Greenberg, the brother-in-law.
Greenberg,
Okay,
yeah.
now what?
And she had one son, Avram Leib, who came to the US. I think I said, but he was a teacher of Yiddish. And she had one daughter, Sybil, Madam Sybil. She was a court dressmaker, very fine dressmaker. And she had another daughter, Jessie, I remember. But as I say, they were all one generation older than I. So I didn't know them.
And was he a teacher of Yiddish where?
In New York.
In New York.
Yenta stayed in Poland as well, you're saying.
What's that?
Yenta stayed in Poland, your aunt Yenta.
Yes, she perished in the Holocaust.
She was in the Holocaust.
Then my mother had a cousin, two brothers. Their mother was a cousin to mother's mother. They were the same generation as my mother. One of them, Yankov Abel, was the Rosh Hashoftim. He was the head shochet. Big man, I remember, with a long beard and a long knife.
Where?
In London.
In London.
And the other one, Itche Chaim, he had a grocery store. Very nice people indeed. I think one of Itche Chaim's sons was the British consul in Spain somewhere. That was the kind of people they were. They were very nice people. And
what was their family name?
Gallant.
Gallant?
Gallant.
Like-
Gallant. Gallant. Where they got the name Gallant from, I really don't know, but the name was Gallant.
They cut the Greenberg right back to
I
the
don't
G.
know where they got. I don't know. No, their name wasn't Greenberg. You see, Greenberg was my mother's sister's husband.
Right.
Brother-in-law, yeah.
But this was a cousin to my mother, and their name was never Greenberg.
Right.
Might have been Gallant, I don't know. But my mother did take me to see Yankov Abel once, I remember. And as I say, he was the Rosh Hashoftim.
Well, you've got a remarkable memory, Cousin Lou, and last question I'd have to ask you is, what do you take to preserve that memory? What kind of vitamins are you taking?
Zocharti lo chesed Yorai chachabas l'nosayach lechtei acharai b'midbar. I remember you for the days of your youth when you followed me into the desert in a land not cultivated. Comes from Yeshayah. Thank God my father left me a good memory. He left me a good physique. And you didn't know I was a professional boxer for a time.
As I recall it.
Until my mother found out. I came home one night, I had a cut over here and a black eye. And my mother said, yes, I do. I couldn't lie. I can't lie. Never could lie. And I had to tell her the truth. So she made me promise to give it up. I used to get a few bob out of it. But where I lived in Bethnal Green, which was a tough neighborhood, especially for a Yiddish boy. I used to leave school at 4:30, come home, have a cup of tea, and go to Talmud Torah from 5:30 till 8. And coming home at 8 o'clock in winter, in those days they used to sell milk in half pint bottles. And I used to have a half pint bottle in my pocket, ready for somebody who started. And at 14, I joined a Jewish Boys Club, Cambridge and Bethnal Green Jewish Boys Club, and I took to boxing, and I fought as an amateur, at the club, and a number of my friends that turned professional. Some were very good, and they invited me to come along to what was called the Osborne Social Club on Sunday afternoon. And the matchmaker there was a man named Buster Cohen, and he would the way he would arrange fights was you and you, and you and you. That's how it, irrespective of weights or sizes or anything, you and you go in the ring and fight. And you used to get half a crown a round. If you do 4 rounds, you got 10 shillings. And if you put up a good performance, people used to throw money in the ring, which you used to share. And
You were how old again?
15, 16. And
If you got knocked out, you could pick up the money quicker than the guy who was still standing. It wasn't so terrible, that's right.
but it was interesting, and I could take care of myself. I was very good I was very light on my feet. Keep out of harm's way. But I had a friend, Connie Lewis, who was very good. He was in the running for the championship, and I taught him his bar mitzvah. And there was Harry Misler, who was the lightweight champion of England, and
Jewish?
oh yeah, all Jewish boys. Within a quarter-mile radius of our house, there were at least half a dozen Jewish boxers. Because you had to be tough in Bethnal Green. You had to look after yourself.
My father used to tell me the same stories.
Yeah.
Josh has a question.
Did you ever win?
Did I ever win? Oh yes. Yeah, used to win, used to lose, used to win. Yeah, of course. I think I won more than I lost.
All right.
Cool.
Lou, how old was your father when he passed away?
41.
From what did he die from?
What I could gather, as you understand, I was a
You were a
baby.
child, yeah.
He was walking along the street, and in those days, shops had shutters which they put up at night. Shutter would be about 2 feet wide, and the length of the shop window. And apparently a shutter fell down and hit him on the head,
And that's
and
what
burst,
killed him?
and burst a blood vessel. And in 2 weeks he was dead. That was the
So it wasn't,
account
that,
that I was
it wasn't natural causes?
No, it was
an accident.
An accident. That was the reason I was given by my mother. The shot having gefunden in Kopf und the Platz da Mutter in Kopf und
And your late brother Sam, he died of cancer.
Sam died of cancer of the stomach.
How old was he then, Sam?
Sam was 68. I had a brother, younger than Sam but older than myself, Harry. Harry was a brilliant mathematician. He worked in a tobacco company. From the age of 17, he was the under manager of the statistics department. And they used to call him Mr. Statistics.
Whatever.